You're listening to Mr. Credit on ESPN Radio 1700 with local credit expert Derek Evans. Now, live in studio, Mr. Credit.
ESPN 1700. It's the lunch hour with Mr. Credit. We are live and local here in San Diego, bringing you a very special Football Friday today. Stay right here. Save the station in your dial. We got all sorts of action coming up this weekend as well. Very snoozy NFL game last night, but we've got an insider in the studio today, Mike Souza. Mike, you are a former NFL player. You played college ball at Northwestern. Is this your first time on the radio, man?
It is. It is. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. I'm really excited to have you here. There's so many questions I want to ask. You know, people who have been in the NFL, because when you get those intimate conversations like we're going to have here today, and you get to ask all those questions that you really want to know the answers to, you want to get that different perspective, you're going to be able to bring that to us today. So that's really huge. So first of all, tell us, how does it start? You know, how does someone get all the way to the NFL? When do you start playing football, and when do you know that you've got a chance?
I think when you start coming up through the ranks in high school, and now they're recruiting kids so early in the process. I mean, I started getting letters from Colorado and Nebraska sophomore year of high school, and
And where did you go to high school?
So I grew up in Hawaii. I went to a prep school there called Punahou, and it's one of the top prep schools in the country. I think they've won the Sports Illustrated award for kind of the all-around sports and athletic program in the country the last couple years. So
wow.
We've been known for putting a lot of Olympians, pro athletes in different sports, etc. So I had a privilege of going there.
So you're in a high-profile high school. Mm-hmm. You got offer letters. How early on?
Well, again, sophomore year, already getting recruited by Big 12, Pac-10, Big 10 teams. By the time I was a senior, I had about 70 different offers from around the country.
Wow.
Everyone from Miami, Florida, Oklahoma, USC. I mean, most of the schools you would you recognize. And the funny thing is, I always joke with my buddies that I grew up a Catholic kid. Notre Dame football was religion in my household.
Uh-huh.
And that was the one school that didn't recruit me because there was a kid the year before who was a USA Today parade, everybody's All-American, who committed there and didn't quite work out. So I never got recruited by them, and ultimately had to go a different route. And
so that's where you wanted to go, was Notre Dame?
Yeah, I mean, probably if they came knocking, I probably would have just said, hey, I'm there, done.
But ultimately you decided to go to Northwestern, which obviously means that you were looking at academics as well as football, which you have to applaud yourself for that, obviously, because a lot of people who are in that situation get caught up in the athletics aspect of that decision, but clearly that wasn't all you were looking at.
No, and I had a lot of guidance from coaches, teachers, parents. The way I had always rationalized it, even if I had a 10-year NFL career, I'd be done at 32. And I didn't want my 20s and early 30s to be, the highlight of my life. You've got to do something after the fact.
Yeah, no question. Yeah. So you decided to go to Northwestern. You started there. Now, you said you played tight end in high school?
Played mostly everything offensive line, center guard, tackle, long snapper. Would be brought in, on defense for pass rush or certain situations. So I was just kind of a utility, all-around athlete, track and field, basketball. I mean, it's...
And today, as it stands right now, you're 6'5", 250-ish?
Right.
And so when you're at Northwestern, are you the right size at that size, or do you have to bulk up a little bit to be on the O-line over there?
No, they definitely make you eat up. I mean,
eat up.
Seconds and thirds at the
well, you're going to eat it whether you like it or not.
That's right. So you got to eat up. Now, what weight did you play at, let's say, at Northwestern on the O-line there?
I played pretty consistently between about 295 and 280. I was one of those guys that tended to kind of lose weight as the season went along, just because it's tough to to keep up the muscle mass and all that week to week. So
yeah, week to week when you're trying to recover, it's hard to build, but that makes a lot of sense. So did you tell me about your career at Northwestern? Just give us what was the coolest thing that you experienced playing football for Northwestern, and what was one thing that nobody would ever possibly know about, and maybe some people wouldn't want everyone to know about, but that goes on in that environment?
I'd say the coolest moment, our junior year. We were fortunate enough in 2000 to win the Big Ten title, and we had 3 ESPN Instant Classics that year, the Wisconsin game, Michigan, and Minnesota. And, I mean, really, I could pick any.
3 Instant Classics that year?
Yeah, crazy. So we beat Wisconsin at their place, double overtime, 47-44. And Madison is by far the most insane place I've ever played football. It's a very aggressive environment. Only 88,000 in the stands, but it's probably the most raucous of all the Big Ten.
Only 85 or 88,000 in the stands?
Right. Well, when you compare it to Penn State or the Big House, 105, 110, I mean, you'd expect that to be more intimidating.
How many people would you guys bring in Northwestern?
Oh, God. I mean, our stadium seats 48, and every home game you probably had half as many of the opposing fans as our own. So we didn't have a whole lot of a home field advantage there.
That's good, though. I think it is. You get used to that because you're going to get that on the road. I mean, and it's brutal. Those college environments on the road are just brutal. I mean, they'll call you everything but a child of God. The other team will.
Well, pretty much.
So now, tell me what's the one thing in that experience that it might be interesting to people out there to understand about maybe the process or the way the games go, or things that people out there don't know that would be interesting for them to know.
Right. I think just. The one thing that I thought was interesting is football really starts becoming a business at the college level. I mean, it ceases to be purely about the game. I think high school was the last time I could honestly say it was all about fun and everything. But once you get to that level, I mean, the coaches, the schools, I mean, they're figuring out how do we win, not for the kids, but how do we drive revenues for the programs? And, the coaches are looking at how do they move up for their career aspirations. And the NCAA is going to have to do something at some point to rectify that situation. It's a difficult, quandary they're in, but there are athletes who, for instance, when I was there in Evanston, you're getting, $700 a month to cover all your living expenses, and you're shacking up with 4 or 5 guys in a small house, and I mean, you're scraping by most of the year. You're not living high on the hog at all.
Okay, now let me ask you a question, because we talked about this last week, and I'm pretty passionate about this. Do you think there should be some sort of revenue share, or do you think college players should receive more compensation for all the revenue that they generate for these big universities?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that should be considered. The problem is, in the way the economics of athletics work at the college level, and this is, football and basketball bring in the majority of revenues, and they have to fund all the sports. So if you siphon off more money from football for those particular athletes or basketball for those particular athletes, how do you make it fair across the board? And I think that is.
Well, what's really fair, though? I mean,
right.
Honestly, let's talk about that for a second, because if it's you just said it, point blank, it's the football programs, it's the basketball programs that actually bring in the money, sure. Yet they're being forced by some legislation, which is typical in America these days, that, hey, we have to give everything to everyone, even though only some people are providing the majority of the fruit that we're sharing. What's really fair? I mean, in my opinion, it's only fair. You get what you bring in. If you bring food home, then you eat that food. If you want to give some of it away or share it with your brothers and sisters, you go ahead. But if you go out and you get the kill and you bring the food home, you get to eat it. And in my opinion, the football players, okay, especially the basketball players, those are the ones who are going out and getting the food.
And, it's a very compelling argument. And, as a former football player, in the moment, I'm sure I would agree with you. But as you get older and you get into life, you start having your own children, and you have daughters someday. Mm-hmm. And your daughter, field hockey is her world, or volleyball is her world.
Mine's almost 4.
Right. And, she's committing her life to being, a phenomenal athlete at that. And she has the ability to get a college scholarship and so forth. And you know what? That scholarship is funded by the revenues brought in by the football program or basketball program. I mean, everybody has their motivations in the process. So do I think that the athletes should be paid or compensated more based off of just what they're bringing in? I think that's difficult. But what I do think is the schools as far as the licensing of all the apparel that gets sold and all these different revenues that come in, I don't know if a head coach should be making $5 million while a player, again, is scraping by. I don't know how you rectify.
So you think the coaches are overpaid?
Well, it depends. I mean, it's whatever the market will bear, right? If a school will pay it, then that's what the market is.
See, I like the idea of let's talk about a market, okay? And I really do like that. And let me clarify something else. I'm not saying that you should take away scholarships for the other sports. That rule that's in place, I like it. I like the rule that, you need to have scholarships. People need to be able to go to school on scholarships. And schools need to have teams in all these different sports. You don't want to just have a football team and just have a basketball team. You need a volleyball team even if they have a drought for 10 years. You need to have these things. You don't want to be start and stop. You need to have a program. It needs to exist. People need to be able to come there. That's what creates tradition. That's what creates great, alumni and, creates a feeling in college which is just unmatched. I mean, having experienced that 10 years ago myself, I can say it was definitely the funnest point in my life. And I mean, when you are in college and I went to Mizzou, you put the Mizzou shirt on, you go to a women's volleyball game, it doesn't matter where you go to, you're screaming and cheering for Mizzou. And so I don't think that any of that should ever stop. Let me just make that really clear. I do want to get your opinion on a couple things. No question about that. We're going to talk, and I want to talk more about this. No doubt there, but there are a lot of people out there who are experiencing financial hardships right now because of the state of the economy. And we're going to talk about the economy a lot, obviously with your background in finance, as well as playing football at the collegiate and NFL level. We're going to talk a lot about that. But there's a lot of people who are having hard times right now. There's no question. There's a lot of reasons why, too, because the banks are attacking us. The government's not helping. People's minimum payments are being doubled. Interest rates are increasing on credit cards without any notice. Or without reasonable reasons to do so. I have a lot of people whose houses are underwater. A lot of people who have second mortgages above and beyond. The first mortgage is more than what their house is worth now. We have people whose credit scores are being hit hard for accounts that aren't even theirs. A lot of things are happening to a lot of good people right now, and it's a shame. But let me tell you something. There is a solution, especially if your problem is financial stress. Because it doesn't matter what situation you're in or how bad it is, you can get a fresh start. You can hit the reset button and go back to the beginning and start all over. Everyone can. It's called Chapter 7 bankruptcy, and it's the number one thing they don't want you to know about. It's the reason why I bring you William McDonald. It's the reason why I bring him in the studio. It's the reason why I recommend him to you every single day, because if you or anyone you know isn't enjoying life the way you should be, because we only get one chance at this thing called life, and you better make the most of it. So if you are being held down by financial stress, make the call today. Become debt-free. 858-437-0103 if you want to become debt-free. 858-437-0103. Call William McDonald's office. Set up your appointment. You don't go and file bankruptcy over the phone or on your first appointment. That's not how it works. You go and you become educated about how you can use the law to legally delete your debt, just like Donald Trump, Walt Disney, Honest Abe Lincoln have done in the past. William McDonald, McDonald Legal Group, 858-437-0103. When we come back, we're going to talk about last night's game. We're also going to finish the Mike Souza story, who's our special guest in the studio today, former collegiate football player and played in the NFL for the Indianapolis Colts. We were going to give you some inside information you cannot miss. Stay tuned. Mr. Credit, ESPN 1700. We'll be right back.
I've worked with plenty of different mortgage companies in San Diego, and while there are some who do a great job, there is only one that I can say is truly the best in the business. The Craig Sewing Lending Group provides an experience and expertise in real estate financing that is absolutely second to none. I've known Craig for a dozen years, and I know you would be satisfied working with him. Call 888-880-9500. That's 888-880-9500, or go to craigsewing.com if you're interested in buying real estate in Southern California. It's also worth considering the terms on your loan if you already own property. Rates are at levels that just absolutely boggle the mind right now, and chances are you could save some easy money here. Call Craig Sewing today, 888-880-9500, and tell him Mr. Credit sent you. That's 888-880-9500, or online at craigsewing.com.
Your driver's license, military ID card, passport, professional ID, utility bill, tax payment. One of these documents and your birth certificate are necessary to process your voter's credential. Call 1-800-433-2000 or go to ife.org.mx to make an appointment.